This episode may contain explicit language.
I feel like rituals are kind of having a moment. What do you attribute that to?
I attribute that to the fact that we really, humans need them. We've been doing rites of passage for millennia, well before education, well before religion even.
Reading everything you've written about rituals, I think I'm really struck by how the rituals build community.
I guess our ritual is whenever somebody in the family passes, we pray the rosary for 8 full days.
Betty, could you talk about the grief and hope threshold ritual?
So that's one of my favorites. I've done that one a lot over the years before things really got awful.
This is Karen Feeding. We're 3 friends with kids who get together every week to talk life, swap advice, and keep each other sane while muddling through this weird and sometimes wonderful thing we call parenting. I'm Elizabeth Newcamp. I'm the mom to Henry, who's 13, Oliver, who's 11, and Teddy, who's 9, and we live in Honolulu, Hawaii.
I'm Zak Rosen. I live in Detroit with my family. My daughter Noah is 8, and my son Ami is 5. I host another show. It's called Weirdly Helpful.
Hey, I'm Lucy Lopez. I'm mother to Amelia, who's 15, Avery, who's 13, and we live in Miami, Florida.
We're here to talk about the ups, downs, and everything in between when it comes to parenting. And gosh, lately, there's been a lot in between. Every week, we answer your questions, share our own parenting triumphs and fails, and try to make this feel like the kind of conversation you have with your friends.
And today, we're talking rituals, specifically grief rituals. Things we can do that go beyond the basic self-care to deal with the seemingly never-ending onslaught of bad news and crises we're facing right now, which makes this an especially trying time to be a parent.
So we're bringing on a guest, Betty Ray, a ritual creation expert who's going to help us all find ways to cope. Let's get into it. Betty, tell us about yourself.
Sure. Hi there. I've been involved in rituals and rites of passage now for about 10 years. I started my work in this space, actually in education. I worked for 10 years at the George Lucas Educational Foundation, and I was really fascinated by how we might be able to help kids become more engaged in their lives as learners, as humans in society. And working for George Lucas, I actually had the fortunate opportunity to study some of the Lucasfilm library stuff. And he's a big proponent of rites of passage. And so I started to become really fascinated by this idea of how we might take rites of passage and update them using this framework, this design, which is, has long roots in human history. I mean, we've been doing rites of passage for millennia, well before, or education, well before religion even. This is a thing that humans do to prepare their young people for life in community. So I thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if we could use this tool for contemporary young people? So I got involved in rites of passage that way. And then ritual was just a natural offshoot. Now, ritual is a different thing. Rites of passage is a specific kind of ritual in my mind. Ritual is this idea that we can arrange time, space, and action to create a shift in how we feel, focus, and make meaning. So it's an intentional practice. And rites of passage then was just sort of an offshoot of that. So I spent about 10 years in education, and then I moved into rites of passage, and I've been doing that in rituals, and I've been doing that in various forms ever since.
So cool. What a niche, Betty. I love that.
Yeah, it's a little weird because people think, rituals, is that some kind of weird, it's, people don't always know what that means. And especially if you've got some, religious backstory that's been complicated, so yeah, it's a niche.
I feel like, I don't know if it's the people I hang out with, but I feel like rituals are kind of having a moment, and they're not, I don't know if they're mainstream, but they've emerged as a thing that's not like this weird esoteric thing. What do you attribute that to?
I attribute that to the fact that we really, humans need them. It is I feel like there's sort of this, it's an archetypal practice. There is evidence that people have been creating rituals since the Stone Age. I mean, this is something that we've done cross-culturally, throughout location, throughout history. It's not a Twitter challenge, right? It didn't blow up on Instagram. It's a thing that humans organically have created over, millennia.
It didn't start with the Ice Bucket Challenge. That's not.
It did not.
Okay.
Although a lot of us found it that way. But yeah, I think, because we've sort of suppressed that, or we've commodified it in our culture, we haven't really been able to have organic expressions of that. And I think the times are just so complex right now that we're really seeing this resurgence because we are, they're spontaneously, I think we're spontaneously creating them.
Can I quote you, Betty?
Ah, yes.
You recently wrote this essay that's so timely, and it's, in line with what we've been talking about on the show. It's we're in this really dark moment in our country, and you write, in moments like these, experts often recommend grounding strategies like disconnecting from the media fire hose, tending to self-care, staying connected to community, and focusing on what lies within one's control. And these practices are crucial for navigating times like these. But grounding strategies alone rarely address the emotional payload that sits just beneath the exhaustion and rage. What is so often left unnamed is grief, the cumulative sorrow of living in a world where what we love is repeatedly harmed, threatened, destroyed, or revoked. So, what are you seeing? What are you seeing families and communities turning toward to acknowledge their grief, like right now?
Well, to start, I'm from Minneapolis, so and I have a lot of friends and community. I'm witnessing a lot from my
Are you
community.
there?
I'm not. I live in California, in the San Francisco Bay Area, but I grew up there. I spent 33 years of my life there, and I have several friends and family still there. So, what I'm seeing both there and here and all over the world, which is amazing, is this spontaneous creation of these moments together where people are, if you look at some of the footage of what's going on in the on that Hennepin in 26, or sorry, Nicollet in 26, where Alex Petty was murdered. There's a spontaneous creation of an altar of objects, of moment, of beauty, of photos, of prayers, whether it's real lowercase p prayers or prayers from traditions, that people are, and musicians spontaneously singing, creating community through voice, through bands, through drummers lining up on the Stone Bridge playing drums. This kind of creative expressions to sort of metabolize these feelings, which are so complex. And I'm seeing that in family systems too. And, I've been talking to several families where, they're how do I talk about this with my kids? How do I tell my kids that this is, happening up the street? And, there's obviously the parent needs to protect and help the kids feel safe. And you know what? We probably aren't going to walk to the grocery store today. We're just going to have to maybe have some friends bring our groceries to us. And it's, right now we're not safe, but using ritual is a way to help create a sense of structure and safety and community, and a place where it's safe to express emotions, I think is really important. I was raised like, emotions, we don't really want to express those, right? That's not okay. It's feelings, it's just extra. We don't want to. And I think we really need to honor feelings. If we don't, then they can become fairly, it can become cancerous, or it can become projected outward and create more arguments and disarray.
I'm increasingly convinced that the way, out or through all of this is through community. And so reading everything you've written about rituals, I think I'm really struck by how the rituals build community. Like, we have this kind of innate want to participate in them. They tug that shared emotion. It's like a way to share that, and people can come as they are around one, idea. But I guess I want to ask, as we're sitting here now, knowing that these rituals are a way that we can move through this and a way to build that community, like, what can we as individuals do who are listening, who have the capacity to bring these rituals to our community or to use these in this moment? Like, are there steps that we can take? Are there things we should be doing? Should we just be out there looking for ones and showing up, or should we be starting them? Do you have sort of advice on that in this landscape?
Yeah, great question. Because it really is about to be able to have agency to do something in this mess is really healing. Right. And so I think that's a really good question. So I would say, certainly, understanding what a ritual is and what it isn't, just so that we can really think about it with that level of intentionality. Some people in a lot of like pop culture, it's a ritual every day to use this makeup. This ritual is a big brand right now. All the brands want you to be in their, in your daily ritual. And so really thinking it's actually this intention to be present to something that's larger than ourselves, and that may be our community and our grief and our sense of fear and our sense of hope amid fear. So I think, creating spaces in the house for and time and space in the home. So, I have this little array of candles that are lit right now, for this moment, right? And to be able to say, this is a really important moment for me. I get to, speak this truth and to, say on a Friday night or a Sunday evening, sit around, light a candle. Things are complex right now. It's uncertain. And then giving everyone at the table a chance to speak about something that's heavy. And it may not be the world. It may be, I've got an English test and I really struggle with that. So there's a way to create this permission for sharing burden and for the community, whether it's the family or a group of friends or a whole, neighborhood or an entire, ACLU, training for 70,000 people, which was amazing, turning that into some kind of a shared experience so that we can feel stronger in our numbers and supported in our numbers.
Yeah, I want to highlight what you just said though, because I think so many of us about being small, being okay. And for parents, even just starting in your home, starting with one other family, because I think so many parents feel like my burden is already so heavy, day-to-day parenting. So then also trying to show up in these bigger spaces or we don't all have to do it all. And so if you can start by doing it at home and learning to share and invite another family or invite, whoever just happens to be there to do these moments. I hear you saying there is value in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And in fact, probably more than any, because that is that first step of getting it into a sense of expression. And once it's out there and you start to feel the value and the benefit, it starts to feel, it becomes this self-generating energetic shift. And that's the ritual. The ritual is designed to help change perspective. It helps to change focus and express feeling, and that just feels good. It feels good to have a moment together. So maybe then somebody says, okay, let's bring another family in, or maybe we could do something on the anniversary of a big, complex night that was really hard. Maybe we can do something on a date that gives us additional significance. So it becomes it can become very it can grow its own. It can become self-fulfilling.
Let's be honest, life gets messy, families fight, coworkers overstep, partners do weird stuff in bed. Luckily, Slate's advice columnists have seen it all. Sign up for the free Slate Advice newsletter and get our latest takes on sex, parenting, money, and every moral gray area in between, plus exclusive bonus letters delivered straight to your inbox. Subscribe now at slate.com/advice.
People, when they think about rituals, what does that ritual look like? Actually look like in my family, I guess our ritual is whenever somebody in the family passes, we pray the rosary for 8 full days. It's something that my grandmother started in Cuba, brought it to us here. It's very much part of my family's culture, right? And then when Parkland happened, I live in Miami, Florida. When Parkland happened, Betty, I prayed the rosary for 8 days with some of my coworkers during lunch break, right? For the families, for the kids, the whole thing, right? And now this week, with everything that's happening and how everything is so hot and heated, we spent Saturday night, we went to an outdoor movie theater that the community park held. And it was like a movie. We were watching Superman. And although the vibe, in my opinion, was very off, everybody was eerily quiet, there was this tense, layer of this gathering of families under the stars with their kids and their blankets and the popcorn and the food truck. Even for Miami, it was kind of quiet. But I found peace in that, to be around other people who I can feel were going through the same, maybe not as intense as other families, but just a little bit of our hearts were damn, this is what family feels like. This is what community is. So when you speak on rituals, I'm not saying going to a park and watching Superman under the stars is a ritual, but that idea of just being with other people in a very tight, I sound like Avery when she says tight because she gets nervous. She calls it tight. In that tight moment, it felt very like Elizabeth, like when you go to church, it felt like that. Nobody really said anything. Nobody really obviously we're watching a movie, but it was like this vibe of like, can we just sit here? Can we just watch this? Is that considered ritual? Is that an example of ritual? What does that look like?
Yeah, I first of all, that's such a beautiful story, and I'm really touched that you got that out of that, because I think that those moments, I think that we don't really have a nationally understood definition of ritual. I think for you, it sounds like it was. You took that away and you made that into meaning. I think the definition, from my working definition of ritual, is really about how we shift our feelings, our focus, and how we make meaning. And it sounds like, those moments where you could sit and be in togetherness with this community, and that everybody, was experiencing a sense of quiet. It sounds like you weren't the only one, and so, yeah, I think that is a ritual, to the extent that you could use that as a way to metabolize the feelings that you were having, and that other people did the same. There's as a designer, I look at a moment like that and I'm like, wow, that's a really big, that could be a couple of words, just a moment of quiet for all of the suffering in the world right now. And that's, and that can be internalized. You could say that to your little group on your blanket in your, hey, let's take a moment, and so that we can be intentional with our communities in these bigger moments where it might be weird for you to stand up and be like, all right, everybody, but you can certainly take
Lucy
that leadership with your community.
Lucy would totally do that.
I would probably do it.
Okay, go ahead. Oh my God, go.
It's interesting you say that, Betty, because there's a scene, and I don't know if any of you guys have seen the new Superman, but like Superman comes up from like the rubble after saving this woman in her car, and he comes up from and it's like cloud of smoke, and it's just like, Superman up in the air, and it's a little symbolic. And my cousin's husband, Petey looks at me and goes, don't you wish we could just have that in real life? Like someone just show up and save us. And it, like, I might get emotional. We all got like really emotional. Like all the parents were so emotional at that moment, because we all need that, like just come and somebody hurry up, do this. And then we just quietly went back to watching the movie, and it, yeah, sorry.
Betty, could you talk about the grief and hope threshold ritual?
Yeah, so that's one of my favorites. I've done that one a lot over the years before things really got awful. I think grief and hope is, one of the things I think we're called to do in this moment is to be able to expand our hearts and our beings to be able to hold great suffering and great hope at the same time. Because if we just hold the suffering, we aren't helping, and it's just gonna, that we all know that. And if it's just hope, then we're clueless and we're not tracking what's really going on. So what I like about hope, the grief and hope threshold, is this notion where we take some time in community, or even as an individual, and reflect on what are our moments, or what are we experiencing in grief? What are we grieving? And that can be like where you just write it down on a series of Post-it notes, or you create a piece of art, a collage, or you write a song. It's a creative practice. I wrote about, writing it down, but like there's a lot of ways this can be manifest into the world as like an outfit that reflects grief, or a piece of something that has symbolism for you for grief. And then there's this idea of, so hold that in a moment, right? Keep it over there, and then take a pause, and then create a moment, a threshold moment, where you can do this in order, but and then you like do the same thing with hope. So what are some things that generate hope? What are some things that really, that seeds that you can plant? Maybe you get some actual physical seeds. Maybe again, it's a song or a poem. It can be any sort of creative endeavor. And then there's a moment where you take the hope, or sorry, you take the grief. There's a moment where you take the grief and you transmute it somehow. So you burn it. I found some water, some organic paper, and I made a little origami boat with all my grief on it, and I set it out to sail in the San Francisco Bay. And that felt really good for have it to wash out and have it watch it dismember into the ocean. And so then there's this idea that then the hope then replaces the grief, and that you can then place the hope on some sort of sacred space. I use sacred lowercase s, by the way, but put it on a space where you can be reminded of it. Maybe it's on the bathroom mirror or on your desk, so that you have this regeneration of hope, and that threshold moment you can be reminded of that threshold moment.
I love this too, because the physical nature of it makes it so easy to share with children. Like, I think in this moment, it's hard because for adults, so much of this is happening in our head. And so it's like, how do we get our children to process this, given that we don't always understand what they understand? Right? There's a lot going on. We are processing it too, which also makes it really hard to go through with children. But hearing this, it's like, we could do like today, I homeschool. So this is like, as I'm like, hey, when I leave this recording, because we do some art, we try to do art or something every day, because I sort of in a ritual, like I think that's an important way that we're processing. But to say like, let's paint something that feels like grief today, right? And then there's it's so physical. And then we're going to like do something else that's hope, and we're going to burn this thing and have this other thing remind us like this is such a, I don't know, I feel so moved by this, because you can do it with any age, right? You can do these things with really little kids to start to get them to see this. And I do think it's such an uplifting experience. I've been thinking a lot about how suffering is part of the world, and how sometimes we try to shield our children from that. And somehow that makes these moments harder because we're faced with it and we can't shield them. And so I think these ways in which we introduce this suffering and this grief as like a part of the human experience, but like you say, giving some control, like we can't necessarily control everything, but we can process it and understand it and try to replace it in the world with some hope is a really good,
Is it a good ritual?
It's a great ritual.
Yeah, I really love the idea of it is embodied. And of course, with kids, that is especially valuable to get those emotions running in the body and transmuting them, and so that they can get them out and really name them and get them and have them be witnessed and held by parents or community or caregivers, so that there's this sense that it doesn't have to all sit in the heart or in the body and then just fester there. And especially like, as a parent who, that when you do try to like protect your kids, it's a natural instinct, oh, I don't want her to know about all this stuff. I don't want them to feel all these things. But you're right. It's much better to just, make an art piece and like get it all out. And then it has a container. And then it's like shoved into the void or into the earth, where the earth can compost it and make it into something new.
It's like Lucy said, why can't someone come save us? And it's like, well, it's us. It's, I don't know. I think finding things to do in this moment is so important, right? But what you're tending to, and why I think everything that we got to read that you've written and the work that you do is like, there's kind of the work that we do physically. We go out, we help our neighbors, we build community, but we have to be in a place to do that. And that is about processing what's happening. And if we take these moments now to build these rituals into our lives, we're in a better place to serve and to help and to deal with what's coming, as opposed to being so overwhelmed by it. And that doesn't mean that you're not feeling it, or that you're not, that like you say, that you're ignoring it. That's not this at all. It's like, how do I move through this to hope, where I can be a helper?
Betty, you just invented an app to help families kind of step into ritual. Is that right?
Yeah, well, it's to help families step into better conversations, which helps build into ritual. So we're a startup. We're a public benefit startup. We're babies. We're learning how to ensure that we can help parents. And as Elizabeth hinted, parents are really busy, and it's a lot. So we wanted to start with a very simple app, which allows parents to really build those trusting connections, and having conversation starters with their kids, especially around some of the more difficult issues that they're facing. So that's what our app does. Yeah.
And it's called Pandora's Way.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's you can download it for free wherever you get your apps, which I did yesterday. So it's super cool. I'm fun to mess around with it with my kids.
Betty, where else can people find you?
Yeah, so my work is at the Center for Ritual Design, which is my nonprofit. I work with families, I work with schools. I'm involved with Pandora's Way, obviously, but I love to work with schools, and I can do presentations on rituals and rites of passage. And that you can get a hold of me at the Center for Ritual Design. That's my website, centerforritualdesign.org.
Thank you, Betty.
Thank you so much.
And that's our show. Wherever and however you're listening, subscribe, leave a rating or review, and tell your friends. If you want more parenting advice, you can find Karen Feeding, the column, on slate.com. This episode of Karen Feeding is produced by Cheyna Roth. Micah Phillips is our video producer. Mia Lobel is executive director of podcasts for Slate. And Ben Richmond is senior director of podcast operations.
I'm Lucy Lopez. You can find me on Instagram at the Lucy Lopez.
And you can find me there as well at MuZachary.
And I'm on Instagram as well. You can find me at elizabeth.newcamp. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here on Thursday.
If you want more no-nonsense advice about parenting, relationships, money, and everything else life throws your way, sign up for the Slate Advice newsletter. A special thanks to our Slate Plus members. If you haven't already, consider joining. Slate Plus members get unlimited access to all of Slate's journalism and help support our independent reporting.